Welcome, Salty. Yes, we're all going to be meeting in Portland, Maine for the Float Conference and all hanging out with James Harder and friends. It's going to be amazing. My name is Jonathan Rogue, your host for today's very special public roundtable debate brought to you by the Floatation Tank Association. Today's roundtable is all about whether or not you change your float tank solution. If you're actually joining us here in the Zoom call, you can actually answer the little poll that I'm experimenting with. We'd love to hear, your thoughts on the matter. But if you're also joining us on Facebook, you can do the same thing there. But please jump in the Zoom call because we'd love to hear from you. And let's talk about this. It's going to be amazing. So just as a preliminary reminder for anybody who's wondering, this is a roundtable discussion brought to you by the Floatation Tank Association, and we are actually in the process of looking for board members. So if you feel ambitious and you'd love to help us out, please reach out to us. We'd love to have you help us so that we can help our industry. So with that said, just kind of briefing everybody on who's here now. We have, of course, Dr. Roy Vore. He's definitely going to be the expert on whether or not what we're saying is a valid statement, because sometimes we make these statements that are like, we know the facts, but he has the papers to back them and the evidence. We're also joined by Mandy Rowe from True Rest. She's got tons of information to share, of course. Angela McAllister is here with us, David Ruby, Jeannie Mills, Jen, and I'm not really sure who this is, but Stingray Dickinson. I feel like that might be a moniker, but maybe not. I apologize if it's so. I guess a good way to start this is to just kind of see what people are answering, and we can kind of go from there. So far, the poll, we have a total of 7 answers, or 7, and they're all anonymous. Like, some people don't want to 99% of the users that selected in the poll said that they change their solution as needed. And about 14% say every few months. And it looks like, or just about half of the folks that answered this one so far do it once a year. I feel like this should be something that we send out like to the masses, because it would be really interesting to learn this. So any thoughts? Anybody want to start like talking so that I'm not like on a soapbox up here, Anybody have any?
Unfortunately, I feel like as needed happens at least once a year. So I probably could have answered both.
That's a good point. Well, it was a multiple choice, so you could have answered all of them.
Oh, shoot,
and
I missed that.
That's okay. It's okay. Yeah, it is an interesting conversation. Oh, we got James from Superior Float Tanks. How you doing, James? And is that Peter? Oh, we can't hear you, James.
You're
He's
still
still
connecting,
connecting.
James.
Oh, still connecting. Well, I can tell you they're gonna have some opinion on this. I just guarantee it.
Well, and of course, I want to know the right answer. Roy.
Well, that's going to be Roy. Yeah, I feel like he's really I don't know if he even has the right answer, because I do have a question about totally dissolved solids. Like, I know that people bring this up, and where this really started, I think it was during a microbiology roundtable that we did. I think it was the first vocal about this. He actually said, there's no reason to change the water. Like, it's constantly evaporating. We're adding new water. It's evaporating. So the water's fresh. But then I thought to myself, still change it out. Like, I'll just tell you guys what I do. So in the helm, I actually have it set up where, after, I think it's 1,500 floats or every 2 years. And that 1,500 floats gets squashed pretty quickly. So that's when I decide to do a total salt replacement. And the way that I do it is of course, surface pump. I pump all the solution out. I unplug everything. And then what I go about doing is I just use bleach and I bleach everything, but I'll fill the tank up with bleach and then add water, just pure water and bleach. And then I'll run that through the filtration system for at least an hour or so. And I can see that debris is actually coming out of the lines. I take the filter out, I put a brand new filter in, and I do waste that new filter just because I like to be able to see that change. I see the change in the color, and I feel like even if it's just in my mind, I feel like that filter turning that yellow color and picking up any particulates is good. I take that out, drain that again, and then I finally from there I'll add more water, run that through, drain that, because there's that little bit air, that's when we'll finally fill. And even from there, if I add H2O2, the water will turn kind of brown because of the chemical reaction between the chlorine and the H2O2. I'm sure Roy would probably be able to explain that even better. But then the more H2O2 you add, the more it clears up, and then we got a fresh tank, and then we reset that timer. Anybody else have any opinions on the
Honestly,
Come on, James. We know you're not shy. Turn your microphone on and open your mouth. Come on, James.
or Mandy, if you have something, you go ahead.
I mean, frankly, I don't even do all that much that you just said. I do quite a bit less, but I also have extremely varying filter types, different strengths. So in the stronger, big Iwaki pump spas, I feel like I never bleach it. But in my other spas where it's a lot, the older Royal Spa versions, I find myself doing that quite often.
Yeah. Do you use like pleated, like on some of those, are they pleated filters as opposed to the cartridges or the, because I mean, the cost investment in replacing a cartridge like pleated filter probably is pretty costly, I would assume.
I mean, no, the cartridge filters aren't really the big deal. I think the biggest difference is the pump. There's just so much stuff that gets stuck in the pipes when the pump is not that strong.
Yeah. And just to add to kind of what my regimen is too, in particular, so I have superior flow tanks, and, there's a lot that goes into that cleaning process, but I'll actually take the magnetic drive pump apart and take out that drive. James Ramsey, he'll because I think he obviously promotes this too, but when you take that pump apart, you're going to find debris inside of the propellers. You want to remove all that, and this is an opportunity to do it. I mean, if you're completely draining your system, you can actually pull the filtration system from the wall, get it in a place where you can work on it and remove, replace, repair. Then replacing it, because that's going to drain all the solution out anyway. So I think that for me, part of it is like, well, I know I got to do these things anyway, and I just want to replace the solution. And I know some people don't, like but it is a question of interest to me. Like, I think Roy, you might have an answer to this, but even if we are some folks that don't replace the solution, biannually or annually or every couple months, if let's just say hypothetically, they probably still do because of whatever event might occur or just a need to. But what if no one ever replaces their solution? Like, is there totally dissolved solids that are being built up in that solution from like enzyme material and stuff like that, or other types of material? I feel like
the question you're asking, Jonathan, is what is the scientific basis of replacement?
Yeah, you give us that.
And frankly, in the float industry, that's not established. everybody's monitoring your salt level. And so you're constantly topping up your salt level. So, that's de facto a TDS measurement. So you cannot go by TDS alone because you're measuring total dissolved solids, which includes the magnesium sulfate, but that also includes all the other debris, the sweat coming off the bathers and everything. So that's all lumped into that TDS measurement. So from a chemical viewpoint, there is no marker that we've identified that gives you a clear answer of when you hit that threshold, you should do it. Now, it's much easier in the swimming pool industry because there you just stick the TDS meter in the water at the beginning of the season. You know what the beginning of the season is. And when you hit 1500 ppm above that, you start replacing some water. But in float tanks, the idea is you want to maintain constant TDS. And you're doing that with constant addition. So there is no definitive answer that I've heard anybody ever develop.
Yeah, and it's interesting too because clarity, with float tanks is it's a very important thing for me, and I'm hoping for others too. But like the float tank solution is generally always crystal clear, like it's always just that beautiful crystal clear look. What I see, at least on like the collective, if somebody's water has debris in it or bubbles or like.
Yeah, you're still breaking up periodically, Jonathan.
Oh.
All right, now there's another parameter that we haven't discussed, and it's like how many people in the industry are using hydrogen peroxide? A lot, right? So do you see one tank where the peroxide, you're measuring the peroxide, and the peroxide is stable in one tank, but it's not stable in another tank? That is a direct indication that you have an active biofilm problem in that particular tank. And so the only indication that I can share with you is you monitor the peroxide if you're using peroxide. And when you start seeing a rapid loss of hydrogen peroxide, then it's time to not only change out the solution, but it's time to flush out your plumbing because all the biofilm's in all your plumbing.
So you're saying like once your hydrogen peroxide levels become less efficient, that's a good indication that it's time.
Not when they become less efficient, but when your rate of loss goes up. Because if you start off with a clean tank and you have to add the peroxide once a month or whatever it is, suddenly you realize you have to top it up every 2 weeks or every week. What you've done in that period is you've grown a biofilm inside the plumbing, and the biofilm is destroying the hydrogen peroxide.
Interesting. So when I do, and this is in my case, when I do flush out the tanks completely and
There's
another product I've heard.
Roy, if I could interject a little something there, I think most of us either have automatic pumps that add peroxide to the solution regularly, or are adding peroxide H2O2 to the tanks every day in order to maintain those levels at the very least once a week. So I think that we would notice that happening, a lot more quickly than what you had said, once a month, at once every 2 weeks. And in which case, something that I've done in the past that has fixed the potential biofilm problem is add a substantial amount of H2O2. And sometimes that kind of resets the system. Can you offer any more insight into why that does work, or what else could be done between that and a total drain and refill?
Yeah, when you're slug dosing the peroxide and you're able to reestablish it, that indicates that you had a small amount of biofilm in there. And so you basically then just flushed out something and then probably were able to filter it out and your UV system probably was able to kill off your sloughed off material on there. But when you have a large quantity of biofilm, you can slug dose gallons of peroxide in and it'll just chew it right up like crazy in there. So it's really the amount of biofilm that you're developing in there that is the critical factor.
Got it.
If I can join the conversation, or if we can join the conversation and share some of our experiences, where David and Krista with First Aid Floats. Just as you do, Jonathan, we have superior tanks. We dose and test daily. We change out the solution in its entirety annually or as needed. Our process, much like yours, Jonathan, when we drain the tanks with a sump pump, we completely dismantle the entire system, dry it completely out for 24 hours. Then we refill it, hit it with a spa purge, run it for 24 hours, get everything out of the system, put it back together, drain it again before refilling with a solution and getting our hydrogen peroxide levels up and resalting. The first time, we take apart the impellers quarterly or as needed. And we change our filter cartridge about every 10 days.
And dose the back of the light housing.
We also dose the back of the light housings in our superior tanks because of the backfill of water solution that gets in there. And I'll share the reason why. We also contract out, thank you to Superior Float Tank, to other float centers and collegiate sports. Their use of the tank and maintenance is far less than ours commercially. And we found an outbreak of biofilm that we were able to maintain and resolve for about 2 months. But they also had clear PVC between the intake and the outflow into the filter cartridge. So we were able to see growth in the plumbing in real time over the course of 6 weeks. So it was critical to take it apart and completely drain.
Yeah, the hydrogen peroxide didn't eat it away
Yeah.
at it.
Yeah, we learned very much what Dr. Roy was sharing. No matter how much peroxide you put in there, it doesn't go away. And it all came from behind the light housing. So
Interest.
So we do dose those light housings too.
Yeah. So that's our experience. I hope that helps.
So I never thought about behind the light housing, that chase, and now you got me thinking.
You should definitely clean that up.
Yeah. So it's definitely one of those things. And every nook and cranny counts, like on these things. So this is a good reason, I guess, to change the solution, because each individual's tank is different. And how would you actually go about getting into some of these spaces if you didn't drain the solution in the first place? But excellent insight, David. Thank you for sharing. We haven't really heard from you, James. What's your secret?
I thought you'd never ask again. I'm a big proponent of draining the tank once a year and just starting fresh. I mean, whether that's absolutely necessary or not, probably not. You know, I understand what a lot of people think about with how much we add salt and add water. We're essentially doing that anyway. But you know, I think one, it's a great thing to answer the question, you know, because clients always ask, oh, well, how often do you drain the tank, or how often do you refill it? And we always say, you know, we do it once a year, but we don't know that we really need to. And then go into the whole spiel on how we clean the tanks in between sessions. All the water goes through a filtration process, you know, that whole thing. But still saying that once a year we completely drain it and refill it. And another big part of that is to do all that other maintenance, just like David was saying and Jonathan was saying and Mandy was saying, you know, flushing out the pump, flushing out all of the plumbing. You know, also we completely cut out and replace the caulking of the seams of our float rooms every 2 years. Not that it absolutely needs to be done, but over time those start to look pretty grimy. You start getting a little buildup of the biofilm or mildew in there. So we completely strip that out and redo that, and that makes it look so fresh and clean. We buff the fiberglass on the inside, and like these are all things that maybe you could do it, you know, with some solution in the tank, but it's going to be hot. It's going to be, you know, it's going to be slippery. Also, you could just, you know, pump the solution into trash cans, which we do have, you know, 4 or 5 big brute trash cans that in the event that something happens where we're not intending to dump the solution, but we need to do some sort of repairs either on the filtration system or the tank itself, we will sump pump all of the solution into those cans that are just for float tank solution and do that work. But yeah, I think it's a great opportunity to do all that additional stuff. Like you said, taking apart the impeller, we do that once a year as well to get all the hair that gets caught pre-bag filter in there. You know, we take that opportunity to check out all the other components. And yeah, in that light tube is definitely a sneaky one. I'm glad David pointed that out. Yeah, also, you know, much like David said, we have another business where we service and maintain other float tanks around New England as well. And a lot of those tanks are getting substantially less use than our commercial float center, but they're also getting substantially less attention between floats and on a regular basis. So a lot of them we also encourage to do this annual maintenance annually. And also a lot of those facilities, whether it's professional or collegiate sports teams, they have deep enough pockets that they really don't give a damn about $600-700 worth of Epsom salt once a year, or the fee that, you know, we charge to go and do that service. And it's also a great workout to throw around 1,000 pounds of salt just for a good time as well.
Without a doubt.
It makes for great content, social media content.
Definitely does, yeah.
It sure does. Absolutely. So I feel like it might be difficult now to actually have anybody who doesn't replace their solution speak out publicly about this, which was a suspicion of mine. I would say, Mandy, you're probably the closest to saying like, well, we really replace it as is. But I think that, you know, a better answer to that would actually just be replace it as is anyway, because it's not like anyone's just not replacing their solution, we hope, which likely isn't the case anyway. So, because I mean, if you have to have a contamination event or what have you, there's going to need to be a reason to replace it. But so you're basically on like yearly, James, and that makes about sense too for what my thoughts are on the matter. And same with you, David. Like, you guys actually have stricter protocol than I do, but you've taught me one thing, you know, definitely clean behind the light.
We usually do it like right in the middle of the summer slump, you know. It's like we're slow anyway, and a lot of times I do the majority of that annual maintenance myself without the staff. So, we tell the staff, like, if you want to take some time off, like, this is the week in the middle of summer to go do that, because we're going to be shut down for the week anyway. And then it also gives us some time while our facility is closed to do any other deeper maintenance or renovation projects that we want to do at the rest of the center, painting, touching up paint, fixing all the stuff that the public destroys. You guys all know how it is.
Yeah,
What about when you refill, James? Do you guys use a water softener like at the end of your
Generally,
hose?
generally, I'm glad you asked, because actually, while David was talking about what he does, it made me think about what we do, which is, totally drain the tank with the sump pump, and then while we're doing that, we add more water to it, rinse everything down, and then really just try to get as much of the float tank solution out as possible, including, just running the hose into the filtration system. And then we refill it completely with water, add the spa purge. We usually just let it run for 6 to 8 hours. And then we drain it again and again, try to get every bit of it out that we possibly can. And then rinse it down again, get that out. And then when we refill it, which if you've never refilled your float tank, a really important thing to take into consideration, if maybe you forgot when you did it the first time, is add the salt first. Make sure you add the salt first. Otherwise, if you don't leave enough space for all the salt, then you got to start taking the water out, and it's a hassle. But I'm sorry, what was your question again, Mandy?
Do you guys use like any kind of filter at the end of the hose to protect it from whatever's in the city water?
Yeah, we usually just use what you can buy off of spadepot.com that they call a hose end filter. It just takes out, the first level of particulates. So yeah, nothing
Yeah.
too fancy. I did try one of those charcoal filters once, but I didn't read it first, and it's like you're supposed to pre-flush it. Instead, I just shot all the charcoal in the tank. So that was kind of a pain.
so
I'm not the only one.
I don't actually, because I've tested the hardness of the water in my city, and I just have naturally soft water where I'm located, so I don't use one. But one thing that I'm very thankful for when we built this facility was we have a hot and cold tap on the hose line for cleaning, and we have super hot water that comes through there. So when I add the salt or I add the water, I can actually add the water and the salt, but the salt instantly dissolves because the water's so hot. So the hotter the water, the faster the salt dissolves, and eventually you can get it to where that salt is pretty much dissolved almost, in that time that it takes to fill it and add the salt. But you just walk around like you're squishing grapes, right? Like, I feel like that's what we all do. We're all grapes squashers in the float tank, moving salt around, picking it up and swashing it around. I actually love that feeling. I don't know about you guys, but it's something I enjoy.
I really do enjoy it as well. It's
We
kind
call
of
it
cold.
salt swirl.
What was
We
that?
We call it salt swirling. We're salt swirlers.
Yeah, our names on our business cards are salt swirlers.
That's excellent. I love it. Wow.
Well, can I play devil's advocate then with Roy? If I'm testing my water regularly and I'm not having any kind of bad reactions and my levels are consistent, can I keep that water for 3+ years?
There is no negative data that says you can't.
That's what I thought. It's everything we're talking about is really more precautionary. It's not like there's a buildup of anything that you're not going to be able to visibly see or smell or notice.
Yeah,
it's like
the chances are, if you have a sufficient biofilm in there, you're going to smell it.
Right.
And chances are the smell you're going to pick up is going to be a mold mildew type smell. because the amount of salt in here is strongly favoring fungi, not bacteria.
Mhm.
And that's where you get that mildewy smell that some centers do have issues with.
Right.
And we do have a hand raised over here on the iPhone, Jonathan. I don't know whether you see that.
Oh yeah, I do. Yeah, totally unmute and give us your thoughts if that was something that you'd like to do. Ask to unmute. Maybe that was an accidental hand raise, possibly, but we'll see if they jump on. Yeah, you know what's interesting too, because I feel like it's either at this point, because there is no data, it's either a preference or a precaution. I think for what my feeling about it is more of a preference. Because I the same as James, I'm involved in the in the mechanical and maintenance side of my business more than the actual operation at this point. I just go around fixing things constantly, fixing the float tanks, and I do some consultant work as well. And not quite to the extent of James. I have so much to learn. You really should just sit down with James and have a beer and be like, teach me
Speaking of
everything.
James's, it looked like James Ramsey. Did you have something to add to it? Thanks
Seriously,
for
James.
No, we're good. I did want to ask Roy about since our systems use ozone predominantly, that going through the pipes, would that help to clean or kill the biofilm in his opinion?
The two-word answer on that is hell yes.
Thank you.
That's a good call for the AOP 25.
So Roy, would you say that if we are using ozone and have the ability to increase the level of ozone, then that's also a good step to take if we're having issues?
Absolutely, because ozone ability to penetrate biofilm and inactivate the organisms in it is several hundred, if not thousand of times stronger than that of hydrogen peroxide. So if you have an AOP system on there with an ozone feed, you are probably less likely to get biofilm in the open areas, but that still leaves you those niches in there where you're not getting the treatment in there, because we everything you're describing about where the material grows, I see this in traditional hot tubs and swimming pools every day. So it's the niches whether you're really worrying about in there. But you're with a ozone system, you're not going to get the likelihood of such biofilm buildup on the plumbing itself. It's going to be in the hidden areas.
So with that said,
Now
James, do you switch on the timing for the ozone to a greater length during those cleaning processes?
I don't know which James, but
Well, either James.
yeah, I mean you can you can't when we had like contaminations, we do tell people to run it, obviously several times longer, as well as adding either a little more H2O2. But again, I know for like all of our Florida customers, they're required to send those water samples off just for safety testing. And a few of the places that have ran water for 2 and 3+ years, the water's safe. It may not be aesthetically perfect, but it is safe to float in, which is the primary goal. But I'm with you where I want to see crystal clear water at all times.
Let me throw in a comment there on James. It's like I think everybody knows on here, I'm collecting microbiology data. We've got like 10 centers sending in data in here. We've got hundreds of samples probably at this point, and there'll be a poster on that at the float conference on here. So of all the data I've seen come in, I have not seen a single failure where I would close a tank yet. And I have not yet started looking at disinfection systems. So it's just like, it's what we're probably talking about based on what I'm seeing is aesthetic issues on the quality of the water, not necessarily health related issues. Because even if we do have some fungi with some mildew smells in there, that's an aesthetic issue, probably not associated with a human health concern. So, you know, the peroxide we've talked about as a one issue there. We're talking about general maintenance. The other thing is really, realistically, it's the visual and aroma of the float tank. So, I mean, if it starts smelling funny, you've got an issue.
You know, so Roy, and I think this goes out to the entire industry, that we get additional information on this. Like maybe we should come to some form of a conclusion, because I mean,
You're breaking up again, Jonathan.
That's all right. We have some other hands raised. Does anyone else who has their hand raised have anything to share?
Hi, this is Jeannie. I did have a question. So back to James Ramsey's point, if you're using ozone, is it even necessary to use hydrogen peroxide on a regular basis?
Probably not. However, there is an advantage of it if you're using a ozone system with peroxide. You may, and I say may because there's not much data on this, you may be forming some free radicals which are providing additional oxidation, and they exist, you know, for milliseconds in there, so they do not present a human health issue. So you may getting them super oxidation going on there for a little bit, but the ozone will destroy the hydrogen peroxide.
Okay, thanks.
We still have the hands up on the iPhone. Did somebody with the iPhone want to ask a question?
That might have been me.
Yeah, Jeannie, you still got your hand up.
Put your
Jen
head
has a question
down,
for
Jimmy.
you, Roy. Jen wants to know if there's any DBPs being formed with the use of the ozone systems.
Disinfection byproducts in there. Normally,
Got it.
we're talking about disinfection byproducts when we're talking about use of chlorine in there. It's normally that term talks about chlorinated organic compounds in there. There's a few people that are required to use chlorine in there. So we probably have a few centers with some disinfection byproducts in there. The bad news is we do not have any reliable test kits that will work in float solutions. So if anybody wanted to spend $2 or $3 million, we could probably come up with a test kit. So to answer the question, do we know what the disinfection byproducts are? Probably not. We don't know what they are. So we don't know what we're forming, and the regulation where is requiring the use of chlorine is scientifically ill-advised, is the best way I could describe that, and be politically correct. And at least Kim is laughing at my comment about being politically correct, because everyone knows I'm so good about being politically correct.
It's a couple of the first words that come to mind when I think Roy Vore. Politically correct.
Precisely.
Well, hey guys, as fun as this is, I'm actually in Avon, Connecticut, doing a 3-tank annual maintenance for another float center right now. I'm in the middle of it, and because they also drain their tanks once a year. So I'm still hoping to get these 3 tanks started up tonight. and that means hauling close to 3,300 pounds up from the basement. So I'm gonna scoot and go get a workout in.
Thanks for joining us,
Bye,
James.
James.
Really appreciate it.
So great to see you. I love you. Looking forward to seeing you next month in Portland, Maine. All right. See you guys.
38 days.
And and if I break up again, just cut me off. I really apologize about my internet connection. But some of you guys might have heard me mention that I use chlorine when I do my total salt replacement. And
You just broke up again.
I will say something about my drains that I only have to do it in a few places, but does anyone else have a city where they don't let you drain and you actually have to have it come picked up and pay a fee to have it picked up? No. Napa is extremely particular. They do not want salty wine. So they come and they make sure that, I don't know how they'd even know, but that we don't drain it into their city water. And one other time I've had to apply for a permit in Florida to do the same thing, which makes me want to follow Roy's instruction, or Roy's, not instruction, but advice, that if I don't have to drain it, I probably won't.
Yeah, we do see a number of municipalities and a few counties changing their regulations on swimming pools, about draining swimming pools and where they come in there. Generally speaking, they're not well enforced outside of the state of California. Maryland is a little bit finicky too because of the Chesapeake Bay on there. So, but those, I think, are the two biggest states that I hear concerns on statewide basis, is Maryland and California.
Well, I have 7 locations in California and only one requires me to have it picked up.
Yeah, and so there
hope that
you're
goes by the
seeing a
wayside.
county regulation, and it's like, that's the same issue we see in swimming pools, is there's no uniformity in regulations across the
Right.
board.
Right.
so
Drew Kane, you have been on mute the entire time. Are you going to say anything, or we're just going to have to call you out and tell you to turn your microphone on and your camera on so we can see the purple background from your float center? Come on, Drew.
Going once, going twice.
Oh, come on, Drew. You know, we got you, Drew.
how about Kim? Any thoughts from?
I'm going to assume the rest of that question was any thoughts from Kim, and I have no idea. We've actually been in the process of draining each of our cabins over the past month or so, and we've been kind of picking days that have been slow, or we've closed down the center for a day. I don't have anything different to add aside from, what everybody else has said. We did save some of our solution because we had tested everything. Everything looked absolutely wonderful. And so we didn't drain all of it. As far as down the drain, we actually had storage containers. Oh my gosh, I just blanked out on what they were called, but we purchased a storage container that's used for commercial food storage. And it kind of has the grid around it. Somebody give me the letters. It's IBC. I think an IBC tote. An IBC tote. Yeah, you can purchase those used. If you do, just be very, very cautious. Make sure that you clean and sanitize them very well. But that can also help you, if you do have good solution and you're really looking to make sure that your plumbing systems and your filtration systems are completely clear of any of the biofilm. We wanted to make sure that we didn't have any of those issues, and everything, was great. But it's a job to, drain them and then get everything back up and running again. But it is a really good chance to get in there and give a deep clean to the entire surface and all of that. So even, I think that the debate doesn't necessarily have to be the polarity of drain and replace or never drain and replace. There can also be that middle ground of, drain it, but keep it, test it, scrub everything down, break it all apart, take apart your filtration, take apart everything and make sure that it is all in good working order, and then put it all back together again. So there's also that option too. So.
Well, you point out something in there, Kim. It's like if you are draining it to a clean, pre-sanitized IBC in there, and then you're able to get into the light niches and pull the plumbing apart. And then if you wanted to do like Jonathan did and do a bleach flush through the system in there, or use the spa purges, which you can get at pool stores, then you've really got where the biofilm is located at that point. So if you didn't really want to dispose of the float solution, once you've got the system flushed out and all the cleaning materials out of it, you could replace the float solution from the IBC.
Yep. So a little bit of lots of options. Options are good. Because salt is expensive, especially these days, and shipping costs on that salt is very, very expensive right now. So we all feel that.
All right, guys. Oh, go ahead, Roy.
I was going to say, it's if anybody looks up, it's a industrial bulk carrier or industrial bulk container, one or the other. And you can look up the pictures on there. They're somewhere around 600 gallons, I believe, is what they are.
You can also get them. Yeah, we got a 300 gallon. We couldn't find a local 200. Everybody was out of stock on the 200 gallons, so we ended up with a 300, and it was definitely, we did one tank at a time, and it held everything perfectly. And they are still large, so if you have very narrow hallways and things like that, you might still need to plan ahead and measure ahead. We had to move our fireplaces and retail credenzas up front in order to get it back through our hallway. But so make sure that you plan for all of that, just like you would with a tank install. It's much easier, but it's not easy to get those things in and out. But it can give you a pretty good cost savings, especially if you can save your IBC. And use that again later, or share it with others in your float center, or if there are other float centers in your area, everybody can pitch in on those together too.
Yeah, the IBCs are designed to be used dozens and dozens and dozens of times, and you can buy them used, but I strongly suggest if you're buying a used one, you pressure wash the heck out of the inside of that thing, because when they come to you pre-cleaned, don't trust the label that says pre-cleaned. And if that sounds like $1 million mistake that some of my clients have had, that's very accurate description.
Yes, we saw some of those when we were in our search, where it was supposedly sterilized and food ready, they said, and no.
All right, guys, I have to jump off as well. But I'll just say a few things before I go, that we are looking for board members at the FTA. We're going to be doing some of those applications. So if anyone's interested, please head over to our website or see our newsletter and you can apply. And we are going to be doing on the 28th a happy hour prior to the float conference, kind of just a virtual happy hour, sharing memories from previous float conferences and talking about what we're excited about, just a chance to get to see everybody again before we all reconvene in Portland. So take a look out for not only our newsletter, but you can also follow us on social media. We're on Instagram and on Facebook. And thanks so much for joining. And you guys want to keep talking, go for it. I just have to hop off.
Thank you, Mandy.
Bye.
And I apologize about me breaking up so much, guys. It's such a shame that happened.
But Jonathan, on the other hand, you provided an awful lot of humor for James Harder.
Yeah, I wonder what.
Yeah, you just broke up again. So it's just like, so James Harder has had a good laugh at your expense today, John.
Well, Mandy mentioned everything that we need to know. FloatCon also has a webinar. too. So join that, but we're basically the ones left. So anyway, I'm going to see you guys all soon. I'm going to make sure my stream gets fixed. And needless to say, I'm going to see you at Flow Conference. And I bet you I'm breaking up like 10 million times anyway. So there you go. No? Gosh, hey, I don't break up the time. I'll just... All right, guys. Well, thank you everybody for visiting and joining us today. And
Thanks all.
And bye all, and you just broke up again.
And
Right.
Roy, thank you for sharing your knowledge with everybody. We love getting to have you for these chats.
Well, it will cost you a beer in the near
Mhm.
future, Kim.
I think I owe you a lot right now.
Okay.
we all owe you a lot, Roy.
Bye all.
Thank you. Bye.
See you in Portland.